We're gonna go over the pros and cons of living in Colorado Springs. But before we do, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the little bell button so that you can get notified when we post our next video.
So the first pro is it's a semi-small town feel. There's about 500,000 people. The traffic isn't all that crazy, just depends on what time you go out and where you're going. Obviously, if you hit I-25 around the evening, like 3:30 and 5, it's gonna be a lot more packed than if you go around noon. In the middle of the town, the other major road is Powers Boulevard. Powers gets kind of packed. I leave for work. I'm currently a police officer with the city. So I leave for work around 4:30-ish, and it takes me about 25 minutes to travel 3.5 miles.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, I get there about 4:55. Colorado Springs Airport is super small. I think it's about 12 gates.
Yeah, 10 or 12 gates.
You can get there maybe an hour before your flight and be fine, even checking in bags.
If you're late for your flight, don't blame us. I think you should be there an hour and a half.
You should still always prepare.
Yeah. Other thing is there's a lot of outdoor activities, free things to do, a lot of museums. So there's a lot of history in Colorado Springs that's pretty cool to check out, even if you have, you know, younger kids. They get pretty worn out just walking around the trails, or if you go on a hike. There are a few apps that you can download, and like it rates the trail. So if you have smaller kids, like we have one smaller kid, and the other two are older, then it gives you a rating. But anyways, hiking, Garden of the Gods, you can drive, park. Sometimes it's hard to find parking, I feel like, or the last few times.
Find decent parking. There's always parking, but it just depends on how far you want to walk.
The zoo is pretty cool because it's on the side of the mountain. After you exit the zoo, you go through and you can go to the Shrine of the Sun, and you have like a really cool view of the city, and that's free if you pay for admission to get into the zoo. And Manitou Springs, for example, is just a smaller city just outside of Colorado Springs, and you can park there and walk around. They have a little stream going through the little town. They have little shops, so it's also on the side of the mountain, so a lot of things for cheap or even free. Manitou, for example, also has like penny arcade, so the kids love that. They have little rides and arcade games and stuff like that. So
it doesn't actually cost a penny though, so take quarters.
Yeah. Another pro, or at least to us, is that to me, that Colorado Springs has 4 seasons. I love that. I grew up somewhere where I had 4 seasons. We lived in Arizona before we moved here, and Arizona has 1 season, which is extremely hot.
And hotter.
And hotter. Sometimes like lukewarm if you get lucky. So having like spring, summer, fall, the leaves change, and winter is really nice. The winter is like my least favorite because the leaves fall off and then everything looks kind of ugly for a few months. But then we have like an actual spring where like things start blooming and the flowers come out, and then summer, and then fall is also like right up there on my favorite things about Colorado, just because the leaves change and it's just really, really pretty.
All I've been used to is kind of warm and hot climates. I had never lived in the snow until I moved here in 2015, and it hasn't been that bad. As long as you're a decent driver, you'll do fine in the snow and the ice. If you don't have like an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive vehicle, just get some good snow tires and you'll be just fine. But usually we don't have crazy snowstorms. We'll have maybe 1 or 2 blizzards where we get like, you know, a foot of snow.
Something else that we love about Colorado Springs specifically, is that wherever you go or wherever you drive, you have a pretty amazing view of Pikes Peak and the mountains. So you could go, I mean, when we first moved here, I would always drive to Sam's Club on Woodman and then park and then take a picture and send it to like all my friends and family and tell them like, this is my view from the Sam's Club. I mean, you could drive almost anywhere and you'd have a pretty good view of the mountains, unless we have like heavy fog that day for some reason. But yeah, so pretty gorgeous scenery. If you get too far south or east, it can be sometimes hard to see, and there's a lot of like pine trees, and Black Forest is nice to drive through.
the further south you get, it's more desert-like, even south of Colorado Springs.
East.
Yeah, east too. It's more flatland towards Kansas. If you go north, like into Black Forest, it's pretty deep and big forest. A lot of trees and pinery. So
I mean, you could go from sand to like historic downtown in 30 minutes, or you could be downtown and be deep into the forest in probably same like 25-30 minutes. So there's a lot of variety. And the last thing that we have for today before we get into our cons is that we have some really good school districts. Lewis Palmer, which is District 38, is like one of the top rated districts in the nation. But last time I checked, it was the #1 in Colorado. And then we have Academy District 20, 49, Cheyenne Mountain, I think it's 12. So some really good school districts with some awesome like computer science programs, aerotech, engineering.
a lot of trade schools as well for high school students.
Yeah, your kids have any interest in like joining the military, we're right here by the Air Force Academy, Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force, but now Space Force.
And NORAD.
NORAD, Schriever. So a lot of the schools have like ROTC or like prep programs if someone is interested in joining the military.
So before we go into the cons, you have to like, subscribe, and hit the little bell thingy. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
To keep up with us. So the first con would be construction. We have a lot of construction in the city. We're growing a whole ton, more north and east than south and west. The west is more established neighborhoods. The south is pretty established. A lot of military live out south. Out east is growing. Mark Sheffel used to be our main like border to the east, but they've recently annexed a lot of land out to the east, like another maybe 3 or 4 miles to the east. So they're growing exponentially out there.
Yeah, and even some of the west side and the more established areas are like rehabbing some of the more rundown parts of their neighborhoods and trying to revive that.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of big stores, a lot of big food restaurants like In-N-Out and Whataburger. Obviously In-N-Out's the best, but Whataburger's popping up everywhere.
Debatable. Shields, we just got a Shields.
Yeah, got a Shields. Great Wolf Lodge is up north as well, so that's a really cool place to stay. It's, like we mentioned earlier, still a small town feel, so that's great, but there is a lot of construction everywhere.
And that leads us right into traffic.
Well, it's not terrible. Like I said, just kind of plan for it depending on the time of day that you're trying to get somewhere or where you're trying to get to, because it can get, you know, pretty backed up. And like I said, when I head to work about 4:30ish, it takes me about 25 minutes to get there, and it's only like 3.5 miles away. So it still moves. There's just a lot of congestion, and that's why they're trying to expand the roads. Like our road here is Black Forest, and it was a 2-lane road forever, and they're making it into a 6-lane road. So
wow, we have 4 seasons.
Sometimes you get it in one day.
That sometimes you get it all in one day. So
Yeah.
4 seasons is great and all until you have it all in one day. So the weather can be very unpredictable. You should always have layers, so you can either add them or subtract them, because it'll never fail. You'll leave your house in the morning, it'll be super cold, and then by 1 o'clock it could be super hot or feel like it's super hot.
We usually keep like an extra jacket and an extra t-shirt in the car, just so we can change if we have to while we're on the go.
Yeah.
And then depending on where you go, it can change, you know, between like 10 to 20 degrees. So if we're like here in Black Forest, it can be, I don't know, 60, 70 degrees. And then we go to like Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, that's up in the mountain. And it's, you know, 10, 15 degrees colder. So just have a light jacket, just be prepared. And it can start raining at a moment's notice. Typically it doesn't snow in the summer, but we have had the occasional snowstorm come through. But usually if it's a big snowstorm, in the summer, you usually have a pretty good indication that it's coming. We get some bad hailstorms. during the summertime or like spring. We're up in like Black Forest area, so we don't get hit as bad. We'll get maybe like pea size. I think we've had like marble size hail. So nothing too crazy to like damage our cars or property or anything like that. But the closer south you are of town, you might just be sitting in that belt. And that's usually like around Fountain, going east to west. Fountain, the road, Fountain Boulevard. That's kind of like the main belt, but it's come up all the way up to like North Carefree, again going east to west, and it usually comes over the mountain and just kind of goes east, works its way to Kansas.
We've lived here in this house for 8 years, and we have not had hail. Now watch, knock on someone.
I know.
We're gonna have it, any hail that's like damaged any cars or anything up here, but it's unpredictable, so it can really strike anywhere.
In Colorado in general, there's usually fires during the summer. So they happen occasionally, and they haven't happened here, luckily, in a really long time. Usually it just depends on how dry we are and how many thunderstorms we get, because usually it's lightning. You get the occasional man-made fire.
The other thing which kind of goes with the weather is that we are pretty dry and high altitude climate. So if we're showing you a house, or if I'm showing you a house, I'm going up the stairs, I still get out of breath. I have not acclimated after this many years. I probably never will. And if you have dry skin, you know, eczema, or like even like joint problems or injuries, obviously in the cold, that's not gonna feel very good. Someone said that this wasn't true, and then someone said that it is true, but you burn easier here. So we have, I don't know what the number is, but I think it's like 300 days of sunshine. So like in the winter time we can have snow, and then if it's a bad snow, it'll melt within a couple days. But usually if we just get a dusting, it's gone the next day. And you'll go outside and you'll think it's cold, but you could still get a sunburn.
And here in Colorado Springs itself, the altitude isn't terrible. So people don't usually get like altitude sickness here in the Springs, but once you go up to like Pikes Peak, which is another really cool place to visit, we'll do a video on that later. Just take some oxygen with you. I know people like make memes about like the cans of oxygen, but those actually really do help once you get to that higher altitude. You will get drunk faster. The first time I came to visit, I had no idea, and coming from Arizona, and you know, I just had one beer and I was already feeling a buzz. So it'll get you running. Obviously, you know, your lungs are, the capacity is not that much just due to the thin air. So you'll get out of breath a little bit quicker. So when you're walking around God of the Gods and you're kind of breathing a little heavy, just know that's why.
And our last one would be that
the cost of living has gone up.
and it's becoming less affordable.
Yeah, it's becoming less affordable. Whenever COVID hit, shortly after that is when everything just kind of started going nuts, and that was across the nation though. Yeah. But especially here, just because it's so desirable, a lot of people found that as an opportunity to like start working from home, and then they didn't have to stay in the state that they were in. So we saw a lot of people from California and Texas moving out here because they're still
really. Washington.
Yeah, relatively cheap here at the time. So people were getting really nice houses, a lot of real estate for, you know, a fraction of the price of what they were paying in their states. So that kind of drove prices up. Construction went way up. It's kind of leveled out now in the last few months, but it's still kind of pricey depending on what part of town you want to live in.
We made the list of like top places to live, like #1, so many years in a row. So like a lot of people caught onto that, and that's why we do a lot of relocation clients, just because there is such a need for it, and there's a lot of people moving to the area.
Yeah, and there's a lot of military, you know, given with 5 military bases. So it's still pretty competitive because there's still people moving to the area with their jobs being military. We have a huge IT tech niche here in the city. And a lot of companies here in Colorado are still letting people work from home. So that kind of appeals to that certain type of crowd that they want to just stay home.
Well, and then people that have, you know, the really high paying jobs in Denver, where the median house price, I think last I checked, was like in the 6s and 7s. So, and then here it's like 4s and 5s. So we have a lot of people that will commute. They will work in Denver, you know, where they're getting paid more. but then it's not as affordable as it is here. And it's usually, I mean, depends where in Denver you're going, but probably like an hour and a half. If you hit traffic, longer. There's all these factors that play into affordability, but overall it's becoming less affordable. Again, if you like this video, you found it helpful, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell button to make sure you get notified of any other videos we post weekly. And if you have any real estate needs, give us a call.
We appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.